Okay, let's now go into question 6. This question focuses on derivatives. Please remember when you're talking about the first derivative, you're actually just talking about the gradient of a line, okay? That connection is something that a lot of students miss, and you really need that in a lot of your section B questions, okay? So I'll talk to that later in later videos, but let's go and do this question. First question here is a first principles question. When you see the word first principles, you should be thinking about this formula here on the formula sheet, right? Importantly, you will always be asked a question like this, right? So you need to make sure that you know how to do it. So I'm going to write out the formula from the formula sheet just so that we have it here for us, right? So it's always f of x plus h minus f of x over h, okay? Then what you do is wherever there is, whatever the function of f of x is, wherever there's an x, I'm not going to put x plus h. So it just becomes a fairly lengthy algebraic exercise. So I'm just going to quickly put this into the equation. If you want to skip forward, that's completely fine. But for those of you who just want to make sure that they're subbing in correctly, you're welcome to watch all of my steps. Importantly here, make sure that you put the second equation, right, or second expression, put it in a bracket because there's a negative in front of here. So this negative will impact our signs within that bracket, so be careful. Right, always remember you cannot drop this until you've subbed in h equaling 0, right? A lot of students drop that and it's like, then they lose a mark for notation, so be careful there. Right, it is fairly lengthy, right? But we have to do it. So it's minus 1 plus 2x minus x squared over h. So the 1 cancels with the 1, the 2x cancels with the 2x, negative 2x and 2x, the x squared with the negative 2x squared, and we're left with this, okay? Which is kind of what we expected, so we are heading in the right direction, right? What we do now is we want to always get rid of our denominator h, so generally you're going to factorize. This is sort of like a fairly standard way of going about this, so make sure that you are familiar with what I'm doing, right? Once you get rid of your denominator, then sub in h. Once I sub in h, you don't write this, okay? So if I sub in h, I'm going to get this h becomes 0, so you leave it, and there's your final answer. If you want to check this, do your shortcut. Remember, your shortcut is you take the exponent of the x, you bring it down, times it by the coefficient, and you subtract 1 from the exponent. So if you did that here, this would be your answer, right, with a shortcut. That's what we got in our first principles. We know that we have now got 5 marks in the bag, and we're happy about that. Next 2 questions, we're just doing the shortcuts. We don't have to first principles. You don't have to use that lengthy definition. We can just go and sub it in. Be careful around your notation. If you don't get your notation right, you can lose marks, and you don't want to lose marks for that, right? Bring the exponent down and then subtract 1 from the exponent, right? Remember, when there isn't an exponent to x, it's just 1. 1 minus 1 would give you x to the 0. Anything to the 0 is 1, and that would then be your final answer. 2 marks. You get 1 there and 1 there. Let's go to the last question, which promises to be a little bit trickier because they love putting these little surds in there and confusing students. Whenever you see this, what you want to do, you want to separate it into individual terms. So the first thing you should do is actually just separate it into individual terms like this. Then, what you want to do is you want to get rid of your denominators and you want to get rid of your surds. So rewrite it, right, like this. So instead of a denominator, put a negative exponent. Over here, right, x squared, the root of x is the same as writing x to the half. So this would become x to the half minus 3 because we brought that 3 up. So this is where we would end up, right? I'm going to say here 5 over 2, right? It's the most accurate way to write it. Now, I'm going to say dy by dx. Don't write dy by dx until you're actually doing the derivative. That's notationally incorrect, Try and be as accurate as possible. Let's now do it. Bring the negative 3 down. It becomes negative 15, right? Because negative 3 times by 5. Then we say minus 3 minus 1, which is going to become minus 4. Do the same thing here, right? And then you have that. Just tidy it up a little bit because we want to make sure that it's simplified, right? And then this would be negative 7 over 2. They didn't specifically say this, but it's generally nice. Well, it's generally the form that they would like it to be in is with a positive exponent. These are negative, so let's just bring them down and make them positive. You don't have to do this last step. You could have just left it there and you would have got full marks. But I'm just showing you as to how you can write this, right? You just bring it down and then your exponent becomes positive and you're completely done. We are now done with the section A of this paper, the easier half of the paper, right? And we're now going to move on to section B, which is where the challenges start arising. Okay.